The long-awaited, the demanded conclusion to Marco Polo's journey.
Popo.
If you haven't, this is part 2. So if you haven't seen part 1,
watch part 1. Or suddenly your character just appeared in China for no reason.
I'd put a link in this video to the part 1, but I can't be bothered, so I'm not going to do that. Just look it up. It's pretty easy to find.
Do it before this one.
It's the one immediately before this.
Yeah, it probably auto-played too this one.
To get everyone up to speed, previously Marco Polo, he'd, as a young man, 17 or so, he'd left Venice with his dad and his uncle on a mission to go east to see Kublai Khan and, convert him to Christianity. And they were travelling through Central Asia, through the deserts and things, and
a couple of bandits
had a big fight.
A couple of priests went the other way and said, no, it's too hard.
Priests couldn't hack it. They could not bear that cross, you might say.
Ooh.
They skipped from watering hole to water hole.
Yep.
All the way, and when we left them, they had just reached Kublai Khan's summer palace.
Yeah, it's Central Asia. Seems like a bit of a fucking drag, to be honest.
It is.
The stands, as they prefer to be called.
The stand.
Marco Polo, now aged 21, arrived at Kublai Khan's summer palace in Shangadu, is how I'm going to pronounce that, in 1275, and was quickly favoured by the Mongol ruler, who employed him as an emissary due to his linguistic skills and curiosity. After 3 grueling years, a journey from Venice, Marco impressed Kublai Khan with his keen observations. Like, oh, look at that over there. He's like, oh, yeah, you're right. And adaptability. He's like, oh, it's raining this morning,
He's like, that guy's red jacket. That's pretty nice. And Kublai goes, oh, that is nice.
It is. All right. Keep this guy around,
You guys have funny looking shoes over here. We do have funny looking shoes.
Sure, I have a lot of silk. He's like, get this guy a job. So the Khan, ruling a vast multi-ethnic empire, valued foreigners. I don't believe it. But foreigners like Marco for their outside perspectives. Marco likely learned Mongol and Chinese dialects, building on his knowledge of Persian from the journey. His initial role of reporting on the regions he visited, providing Kublai Khan, first name basis, with intelligence, trade and governance of local customs. His description of the Shangadu's opulent palaces and gardens reflect the awe and the empire's wealth, setting the stage for his long service. They're the best buddies straight away.
I would also just like to point out as well that I think you've in your head you've blended Kublai Khan and the TV show Cobra Kai.
Oh no.
and you're saying Kublai Kai.
Johnny, sweep the leg.
So, but anyway,
that's all right. Now, going forwards, Cobra Kai.
Cobra Kai.
So yeah, he's sort of hit it off with him straight away. There's not really a huge amount of mention of what his dad and uncle are kind of doing. This is obviously from
probably making spaghetti or something.
Well, more than likely, you just imagine you rock up 13th century, modern day China, right? And you're like, oh, hey, rice and you got your protein and oh yeah, nice. Spaghetti. He just walks to like, Mamma mia.
Just like a mama used to make.
Put down that Mongolian beef. Try the pasta.
So, Kublai Khan.
Yep.
Took a liking to young Marco Polo.
Yep.
Do you know much about why he did that, or because at the time, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was the sort of the emperor of China.
Yep.
But that had been split from the sort of Mongolian Empire.
Yep.
So he was more or less a Mongolian Chinese emperor.
Yeah. I know you probably should have done more Mongolian stuff before this, but during Marco's time, in China, there is a bit of a succession toss-up between Cobra Kai and his brother Bert.
What's the kid in Karate Kid? What's the Karate Kid?
Daniel-san.
Yeah,
Daniel-san.
Cobra Kai and Daniel-san are having a big scrap.
A bit of a scrap up, you know, there's a bit of a crane kind of thing. But so I think there was a distinction. Like you had like Mongol China, Mongolia, because look, you're rotating people in and out of something, you know, because you'd have them, you know, people in China for a bit, and they'd get a little bit soft, and they're like, "No, back off to the plains with you," and you know, toughen up a bit.
I just wonder, because you said he Cobra Kai likes, he likes the foreign point of view.
Yeah.
But I just wonder if, having travelled through, you know, Central Asia or the Mongol lands, if he liked that impartial view of what's happening over there. So it's like, oh, what?
There's I reckon there was probably a bit of that. And I mean, a lot of the stuff that I read just like it insists upon itself that, and Marco Polo noticed this thing about Mongolian culture or whatever with a Christian bias. It's like, yeah, obviously. It's like in every sentence I've just gone like, you know, Control F, find, remove.
And I guess another element to all this, when Mark was like, I noticed this, and Cobra Kai, he just was so taken away by my intellect and all that sort of stuff. I mean, we can talk about this more towards when the story's finished, but this account is from Marco Polo that he recounted years later. Yeah. And so it might also just be his like sort of, you know, big ups to me. Like, he's like, the reason that he stuck me around is because I was so smart and I was noticing all this stuff, and fact check me, bro.
I think that is probably true. I've got a really good example for it actually coming up later where I'll get to it.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is maybe Kublai Khan had his own sort of reasons for wanting to keep this guy around for whatever it was.
You're learning a Venetian, which is Latin, and you know he's getting another Christian perspective as well. You're not just like a Central Asian Christian perspective, Mediterranean.
Because sort of later on, it's kind of implied that they're prisoners of his court.
A little bit.
And then, Marco Polo's like, no, it's because I was so smart and like big brain and all that, and that's why he kept me around.
Just like floats into the room, just massive brain. His brain announces his presence before he enters. But, so Kublai Khan sends our boy on lots of little missions all around the place. So between 1276 and 1280, Marco gets sent on diplomatic and administrative missions to provinces like Yuan and Sichuan, famous for the sauce.
Yeah, the sauce. Yeah.
Sauce. Where he observed local cultures, economies, infrastructure. Marco travelled extensively in the southern western China, reporting on regions like Yuan, home to diverse ethnic groups such as the Bai and the Yi, which is a silly name. He describes their customs, including unique marriage practices and, you know, daughters being whores. But we can get to that bit in a sec. But his role likely involved assessing like tax revenues and local governance for Kublai to help him manage his empire. And it kind of puts him in talks about so now I'm doing all this administrative work. You know, I'm going over here for my boy. I'm going over here to this province and I'm going to check it out. I'm going to write a couple of letters back. I'm just going to whoop white man's bird in the area. And but, you know, he bopped around for a couple of years and between 1280 and 1285, Marco travelled to the eastern cities of Yangzhou and Hangzhou, marvelling at the Grand Canal and the engineering and wealth of the Chinese coastal region. But you can, from a Venetian perspective, like Venice is already a pretty impressive sort of place. You know, it's on the floaty things or whatever. But like, but you get pontoons. But if you get to like a European arriving in China, it must be like a Briton arriving in Rome almost. Like maybe not that extreme, but like.
Look, at the time, Europe was something of a backwater in terms of global politics and technology and culture and all that.
Yeah.
And I think China was like it must have been just like seeing all this stuff that they were able to do, and I think comparing it to maybe after the fall of the Roman Empire, and then people a couple hundred years later see all these huge things, monuments and aqueducts, and just like, how is this possible? It must have been the same sort of feeling.
Same like giants built this kind of thing. Like there's even a mention somewhere where he's like,
if they were giants, they definitely weren't Chinese.
No, very little pocket people. Too much sunlight. But yeah, there's even mention of like, say province and it's his experience in China, and he's like, if it wasn't for like the general relaxed nature and laziness of all these people, like if these guys were an army, they'd conquer the world. It's just like this would be the largest army the world has ever seen.
Yeah.
Which I'm inclined to believe. So in Yangzhou, a key administrative centre, Marco claimed to have served as governor for 3 years. He detailed his account of the city's silk trade and population, and I think this is the place I was just talking about. It sort of suggests there's a deep familiarity. Like he spent a lot of time there, the way he's talking about it, the markets and bazaars and all that sort of thing, stuff to do around town. He described it as the finest and noblest city in the world. Dunk on Europe, and the Grand Canal linked northern and southern China. It impressed him with its efficiency for transporting grains and goods. It's funny, there's a comment here. This observation introduced Europeans to China's advanced infrastructure, though skeptics note, right, so how's this? So skeptics note, like, that this could be bullshit, because nowhere in his story does he mention that there's a Great Wall or that the Chinese drink a lot of tea. So, like, a modern day historian looks at that and goes, didn't mention tea drinking once. Bunch of bullshit.
I did read about some of that, and it wasn't just tea drinking that he omitted or the Great Wall. There was a few other cultural and not cultural things like these people off to the side do it, like just common run of the mill cultural things that he didn't mention, and it leads a lot of some modern historians to say that he didn't actually go all the way to China, that he went to maybe Iran or Persia, and then people were just telling him the stories, and he's like, oh right, no, it's like interesting.
Except we're historiologists, and he definitely got it.
I'm believing the story.
He definitely.
His best buds with Cobra Kai.
Yeah. They went falconing and leopard hunting together. That's fantastic.
Even if it's not true,
you have to
believe in it.
So I've put in this little section here because when I was having a look at it, trying to prepare this segment, one of the things that came up in Google as a suggested thing was Marco Polo gay? Robbed my eyes a bit and clicked on the article, and I found there's an article that's just 100% like, is Marco Polo gay? No. So I'll read a bit of this because I had a bit of a laugh at it. The title was, "In Tibetan Women Puzzled Him." Marco Polo liked women. He called Kashmiri women very beautiful, and those on the Afghan border beauty beyond measure. In Tibet, however, he noticed a strange practice in which he could not make sense of. Here, the old women would ply strangers with girls because sexual experience was valued by future husbands. Quote, "People travelling that way, when they reach a village or hamlet or other inhabited place, shall find perhaps 20 or 30 girls at their disposal, and if the travellers lodge with those people, they shall have as many young women as they could wish coming to court them. The traveller is then expected to give the girl who has been with him a ring or some other trifle, something in fact that she can show as a lover's token. For every girl is expected to obtain at least 20 such tokens before she can get married, and those who have had the most tokens can so show that they have been the most run through, are in high esteem and most sought in marriages.
So it's like the opposite of what...
It's the opposite of just what's going on Christian Europe at the moment. It's just like, check out my daughter and her, fishing box of, trinkets. Yeah, this guy left me a bead. This is a polished stone. The situation, it was much the same in Szechuan, the source place, where men often offered their wives, daughters or sisters. I think there's mention of the reason they do this is because they might be relatively isolated places.
Yeah.
So it might be a trading, like a village or an inn or something like that on whatever road to some place. And you've got the same 100 people that have been living there forever. So they're just trying to get as much new genetic material from everyone who goes past on the way. But, I mean, I don't know. I think that makes sense to me, because otherwise your little town's going to get really fucking weird very quickly after a generation or two.
Again, and I don't know if if there's other accounts that go over this, but this is all according to Marco Polo.
Yeah. And his journey to the east to crush as much puss as he can.
Yeah.
The strangers abide in the caitiff's house, be it for 3 days or 4, enjoying himself with the fellow's wife, daughter or sister, or whoever woman of the family's best likes him. And as long as he abides there, he leaves his hat or some other token hanging on the door to let the master of the house know that he's still there. So, like, you're hanging out, whatever, and, you're just coming home from work. Just one of those rice field Asians or something. You come in the door and you're like, honey, I'm home. And you notice there's another gentleman's hat hanging on the doorknob or whatever, and he's like, at least they let me know.
Thanks for the heads up, boys.
Yeah, thanks for the heads up. I could have accidentally walked in.
That would have been embarrassing.
That would have been embarrassing for you.
That's socially embarrassing.
See my wife and some other person's butt. Ooh, embarrassing for them. Marco Polo talked about the Hang Zeng region as well, which he suggested was notorious for prostitutes. Courtesans thronged in the streets, and in such a number that I dare not say what it is. They are found not only in the vicinity of the marketplace, but all over the city. They exhibit themselves splendidly attired and abundantly perfumed in the finest and garnished houses with trains of waiting women. These women are extremely accomplished in all the arts of allurement and readily adapt to their conversations to all sorts of persons, insomuch that the strangers who have once tasted their attractions seem to get bewitched, and so are taken with their blandishments and their fascinating ways, and that they can never get out of their head. So it's just like, spellbound by puss. These guys, these proper courtesans. This last part of the article that I thought was funny. Upper-class Chinese women piqued his curiosity. As established, Marco was a lover of women. In whatever form, he had a deep interest, perhaps a personal one, in upper-class Chinese women. He warmed to them precisely because they were not like the Mongols and Tibetan girls, or those plying their trade on the streets of Hangzhou. He wished to break into this enclosed world of China, and somehow did, apparently learning a good deal about the private lives of Chinese girls. What he learnt was no less shocking either. Chinese girls were expected to be virgins at marriage, which was not true of Mongol girls. or any other girl he's described so far. Thus, the future husband and the father would agree upon the terms, and then there was a test of virginity, which involved a procedure that was both odd and unique. It was conducted by certain matrons specifically deputized for the duty, who will examine the girl's virginity with a pigeon's egg. After procuring the egg, right? If you go to stick it in the woman through the vagina, if you can just like push the pigeon's egg up there, they're like, oh nah, she's been run through, she's no good. But if like as they're trying to like place the egg inside the lady, the egg breaks, it's like, well, virgin. Still a virgin.
Pretty foolproof.
Yeah. Yeah, and from that point, in 1285, and get back to our main story, our buddy is, heading through Southeast Asia. Kublai has tasked Marco with a mission to Burma and Vietnam, where he could gather intelligence on trade routes and political alliances.
So he's kind of like just going all around the Chinese empire.
Pretty much.
Just doing stuff. Like down to Vietnam,
yep.
And, sort of down that way, and then
yep.
just crisscrossing all over the place.
Pottering around the place. I saw something about he jumped over to Japan at one point, but I don't know. I didn't find it anywhere else. But then that same article went on to say that it's like, yeah, and it was Japan that inspired, what's his name? Christopher Columbus. It was like, I think it was probably China though.
Yeah, probably China.
Because he says China. I think around this time as well, like Mongolia, the Mongols tried to send their, they tried to get over to Japan a couple of times, and that pesky old Divine Win and Uncle Jim Bob come in and go, no, sweep the Mongolians. Kage. Yeah, so he notes a bit of that. He's hanging around in Vietnam now. He notes their spice trade and, diplomatic ties. And it's like he probably, these missions were just like assessing tribute payments and stuff. And just when you get in there, like, hey, these guys down here, they're going to sort of pay you. They know what the dealio is here, and their neighbours are these guys, and these guys, and they really don't like, guy B. Maybe you can probably use that, which the Mongols used to do heaps of that sort of stuff, gathering intel. And at this point, he's travelling less around China. So in 1288 to 1290, Marco Polo, presumably his father and uncle as well, they sort of drop out of the story a little bit. They serve at Cobra Kai capital.
Cobra Kai
HQ. Modern Beijing, as they prefer to call it. Observing the Mongol postal system, which I think you mentioned a bit before. I think it's called Yan, but it's like where, you've got the different points set up, and you could have, one guy, you ride, just exhaust your horse straight to the next checkpoint, pass the information on, the guys are ready to go, and it's a relay,
like a relay race.
Yeah. Or even I've seen like these posts have several horses ready to go, so it might even just be the same dude. He's just like drops his horse off, jumps on, he's like off he goes again, stay, and then hands the baton, bag of spice or letter or whatever to the next guy. So his relay system of horses and messages, spanning thousands of miles, and just like the speed of it all must have been, from the European medieval mind, must have been absolutely ridiculous. Like you're hearing back from, I don't know, Persia or something in a week, couple of weeks, something. Maybe I don't know, but it's not years. Like presumably, like if it took him 4 years to get from Italy to China, then Persia's sort of in the middle-ish, right? He's like, oh, you've heard back from Persia in a month? Damn, it took us 2 years to get there. Kind of puts in perspective, doesn't it? Kind of messed my life. That's He also encountered paper money, which he thought was super great and robust and completely foreign to the European mind as well. Means that currency is probably definitely getting debased, but it makes it easier. You're not
Easier to put in your pocket.
easier to put in your pocket. The Khan's like, hey, this piece of paper is going to be worth one of these.
Yeah.
Or
better
else.
believe it.
And yeah, he's got some accounts of his life at court, including going on hunting missions with his buddy Kublai Khan, with falcons and leopards. So I don't know if he's like using falcons to hunt leopards, or like he's bringing a couple of leopards along with him, and he's just like,
or
yeah,
if he
go
like
get
shoots him with the bow, and then he's like, now leopard, go.
leopard. Use body slam. Super effective. And so we sort of get to a point where he's just sort of hanging around, and I guess we can sort of comment on something that you brought up earlier, which is that he's relaying this story to someone else in a jail cell on the subject of like him just making crap up. There's this cool section where it's like, and I'm not going to pronounce it correctly, but like there's during the Mongol Song Wars, they're sieging the city of Xinjiang, and in Marco Polo's travels, he mentions that he's like, yeah, it's this big stone walled city, and the Mongols have been trying to get in for ages and ages and ages, and like I've rocked up, and Kublai Khan goes, what do you reckon we should do? This is a real bloody head scratcher.
Yeah. And big brain.
Yeah, and Marco Polo sort of floats into the room with this massive brain. He's like, well, in Europe, we've got these things that like pick up stones and throw them at walls. I'll just, maybe you
Why
guys.
don't you do that?
Why don't you do that? And then Kublai Khan's like, oh. And they build these trebuchets, and he does it, which is brilliant, but couple of little issues. One, the siege of that city ended 2 years before Marco Polo arrived in China.
Right, yeah.
And he's already been there for about a decade at that point. And to say the Mongols didn't have siege equipment is insane. Because they famously did.
Yeah. I mean, one of the well-known things is they tossed like bodies with virus and plague and stuff into a city to, spread the plague.
Spread the plague and all that. And I love that, like, there's a cheeky, like, European mindset of, like, every other part of the story is you get a little bit of, like, yeah, he's probably exaggerating that, probably exaggerating that. But when he's like, yeah, so then I introduced the Mongols to siegecraft. And they're like, yeah, I suppose you would have had to show those barbarians how it's done. But, as you said, eventually, things got a little bit, like they wanted to go home. The Kublai Khan is getting a bit older. He's had a couple of little succession things. They're pretty buddy-buddy.
If he croaks though, Cobra Kai, then, it's like, where do the Polos stand?
Yeah, well, probably not in a position of esteem like they have been.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like, oh, cool, we've supplanted, now I've got my own little court. You guys are gonna, I don't know, the gibbet or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, hey, Kublai Khan. Buddy, Kublai, just let us go.
Let us go. Set my people
Feel
free.
And, he's tossing and turning on it. He's like, okay, fine. But look, I've got a job for you to do. I can't trust anyone else to do it. You guys are my boys. They want to do some sort of political marriage they want to do but they want a Mongolian princess, same thing probably, in Persia.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can't trust any of my boys to do this, but I need you to escort the princess to the castle.
No questions here.
And our Polo boys are like, yeah, we'll do it. Let's go. We're ready to go now. Let's go. Is she ready? So Marco now in his late 30s, and his father and uncle, wealthy from their service, requests to go home, but Cooper Clyde was reluctant to lose their expertise. Brains were so big. He agreed when they were tasked with accompanying the princess Chin into Persia for a diplomatic marriage. Marco's final observation of China includes its coal heating and religious diversity, which he describes as they burn black rocks instead of wood.
Right.
Which I didn't realise they hadn't worked coal out in Europe, but I guess that's the case. He's like, oh, they've got magic black rocks that just sort of keep your house warm, which is pretty sick. They've left China from their eastern coast, sailing through the South China Sea and Indian Ocean. The sea voyage was perilous with storms, disease, and piracy threatening the fleet. So the adventure never stops. It was at this point when they're sort of, at the bottom of India, Sri Lanka, he runs into unicorns. He's very disappointed. He's very disappointed. Because unicorns are, as you know, it's the elder majestic horse and a big part of the European...
Rainbow manes.
Rainbow manes, rainbow sort of trail behind it, glitter, all of that. Jesus in its heart. Jesus rode a unicorn.
Did.
Yeah. But yeah, he was disappointed by the unicorns, actually finally seeing them in just the ugly appearance, short stock, just patchy hair. He was talking about rhinos.
Right, yeah, makes sense. They are not particularly majestic looking creatures.
No, you can see him just with his arms crossed just at the watering hole being like, I don't know if I'm going to include this part of my... Anyway, the return journey took about 2 years, and many in the entourage perished. I think there was something like 60 guys with them or something, and then just come back with only 15.
Yeah.
Which again, this could be it's like, what have you done with them all? Most prolific serial killer. The Polo successfully delivered the princess to Persia. From there, they continued overland through the Middle East, eventually reaching Venice in 1295 after an absence of 24 years. Upon returning, Marco, now in his early 40s, found Venice, as what we were saying before, embroiled in conflicts with its rival Genoa. Their long absence and tales of distant lands likely made him a stranger in his own city. It was also like when they got back to the family's estate, so as they've come through, they've had to trade a little bit, lost a little bit of their money and whatever. But they finally got back. He's like, I'm home. Walks in the front door, and there's people living there. And they're his relatives, and they're like, oh, well, we just naturally assumed you were dead.
Yeah, you just disappeared.
20 years ago. No, you can't move back in. It's ours, but... yeah, we can work something out, probably. But, yeah, I think they referred to him as, Marco of the Millions for his exaggerated claims. He's like, oh, yeah, there's this, and this. And he's like, yeah. His father and uncle have died at that point, and sort of just at the very end of the story, where old Marco, I think we mentioned, he gets, Venice is under siege by the disgusting Genoans.
They make my blood boil.
If only I could point to it on a map, I tell you. So he got his boys together and he went out there. He's like, I'm going to show you what's what. And I'm going to put back into the community.
Yeah.
Captured immediately. But he was obviously from a wealthy family, and they thought, these disgusting Genoans, filthy. They were like, well, we can probably trade him back for a bit of money. But whilst he was in prison, He was hanging out with, and I'm not gonna pronounce it correctly, Rustichello da Pizza. Who's a romance writer who became his cellmate and collaborator. Whilst in prison, Marco dictated his experience to Rustichello, resulting in, where we get this today, The Travels of Marco Polo. Ruscellio's flair for storytelling, and this is where it's like probably embellish some details, blending fact with literary flourish.
Like we were saying before, you know, there was those things that we pointed out that it's like, yeah, well, maybe Marco Polo didn't actually go to China, and it's just stories that he's heard and sort of gathered together and go, yeah. But now on top of that, he's telling this stuff to this guy who's a writer who might have been adding a bit of mayo on top as well. And also it's just
translated a couple of times.
It's just this guy saying, yeah, this is what he told me. When maybe not, I don't know, like, you know.
I mean, when you get examples of like, and then he introduced the Mongols to siegecraft. Like,
yeah. And I mean, this is historyology, so we just accept things. Like,
absolutely.
If you've got a written account, we will accept that.
He found unicorns.
That is, you know, it's a fact that this is how it went down. But it is interesting or funny to point out that you have all this stuff, and it literally ranges anywhere from it's completely true to it's all made up. like all of that is on the table.
Well, I mean,
maybe not made up, but it's all just like a story.
Yeah. That is. One of the reason I had that big section about the women and stuff in there was when one of the points that argue that like maybe most of it is correct is because a lot of the details about, you know, just sort of, which would today maybe be like throwing a bit of shade at these, you know, Szechuan girls or Tibetan women or whatever. I mean, maybe he's like a dog. He's like, yeah, check this out. They're real. Like, you look at those customs and it's like, oh, in that region, that was a thing. So it's...
Yeah, I suppose that lends... maybe
some credence to... But you can still be hearing that from Persia.
Yeah, like you might have got to Persia and then met these Chinese traders and like, hey, tell us what it's like back there. And not like you're never going to believe it.
Xinjiao.
Yeah.
Zhao.
You should just go over the hill there to Tibet, and it's like... Yeah.
Just like fucking Tibetan pussy. All right. So, ranging from 100% true to nonsense. But it was recorded, the book was published, and Marco was released from prison in 1299 and returned to Venice.
I guess the thing in Marco Polo's favour is that apparently this book became quite popular within his lifetime.
Yeah.
So... I mean, I just keep thinking, like, it's 20 years worth of stuff. It's a lot for him to remember and just relay to someone. And it's not just...
Someone who's not necessarily writing it down, mind you.
Yeah.
Because they'd be... If he's not sitting there with a pen...
Yeah.
You know, some sort of...
But it's not just like, I went over here and I went to China, met Kublai Kai. That was pretty cool. It's like he's giving details, and then they could do this, and then do this sort of thing.
Yeah. I was his best buddy.
Yeah. So, I forgot the point I was going to make.
It's all right.
But, so it's a lot to remember. And then the book was published and became popular in his lifetime. So I wonder if he was going around correcting anything, or if he's just like, yeah, I'm popular.
Or there's a part where obviously his book's quite popular, and you know he's sort of living the rest of his life as a wealthy merchant. You know, quite set. He's not going on adventures anymore. He's just kind of doing his own thing. He's set up the roads, all the routes, and you know connections and stuff. But yeah, as you said, the book was so popular, and most people said it was bullshit. Like, absolutely didn't happen at all. And to the point that there's a comment that he'd be followed around in the street by children, just being like, Mr. Mako, tell me more lies. Tell me more lies. It's like, oh, kids. But yeah, so he then passed away at the age of 70.